Good afternoon. Hello, everyone. How are you? I want to welcome everyone to this conversation. This discussion is entitled Self Compassion: How to Build and Practice and Why It Matters. My name is Dennis Mitchell. I am the Executive Vice President of University Life and Senior Vice Provost for Faculty Advancement. My pronouns are he, him, and his. And it's a pleasure to be here. I'm grateful that you all came out. We know that some of you are still coming in, and that's a good thing. So if you are sitting on an aisle seat and there's an ability to slide in a seat or two, please do so. It'll sure make it better for those who are wandering in a little bit late. We have a great program today, and I'm really, really looking forward to it. I'm excited about it, actually. Before we get started, I want to thank Columbia Health, our partners, who are serving as co-sponsors today. It's really, it's wonderful to be able to partner with them in bringing work like this to our campus. I hope you'll stay after this talk so that you can hear yourself from Dr. Melanie Burnitz, who serves as Columbia Health's Senior Vice President. She will share the range of resources and supports available to the Morningside campus and to the Manhattanville campus for students through Columbia Health's programming. And if you're visiting us from the Medical Center from CUIMC, I encourage you to please check out Student Health on Haven, which is quite similar and has great offerings for students that are based uptown. I would be remiss if I didn't also thank Dean Jelani Cobb and the Journalism School for hosting us in this beautiful space. Every time I come into this space, I really enjoy it. I just think it's one of our nicer showrooms at this university, so we're grateful to be able to get this space for today's conversation. I want to share a quick word with you about University Life. University Life is a hub for Columbia student life. We share information, resources, events, and initiatives that support inclusion and belonging, health and well-being, sexual respect, and community citizenship. We aim to enhance your experience at Columbia. Watch for our weekly newsletters, which you should be getting every Tuesday, letting you know about all of the opportunities to connect with others and from throughout the university. We hope you'll join us for some of them or all of them, ideally, if you're able. Some quick logistics for today's program. Thanks to many of you who submitted questions in advance. We are incredibly grateful. We'll also have a Q&A session at the end of Dr. Holder's talk, so keep track of your questions. If you're watching by live stream, and I know that some of you are out there watching us live stream, please send your questions via email to universitylife@columbia.edu. I'll repeat that for those of you online. Please send any questions to universitylife@columbia.edu. This event is being recorded and will be posted on University Life's website within the week. So let's get into the conversation for today. As the semester is picking up, I know that probably I'm not alone in feeling like it's getting busier quickly. And sometimes, like all of you, I experience lots of challenges and simply just cannot do as much in a day as I wish I could, or I'm supposed to. It's part of just being human, and I think that applies to all of us. When I experience those challenges, I don't always take the time to practice self-compassion, which is such an important thing to do. So I have a lot of questions about what that looks like for me and for others and how to do it exactly. So I'm excited about today. You know, my questions verge around things like, what are the foundational elements of self-compassion? What does evidence-based research tell us about the impact of practicing self-compassion? What are the types of situations where it's important, or it's most important to practice? So I'm looking forward to learning alongside all of you today to the tools and skills I can put into practice to introduce the principles of self-compassion into my daily routines. To help us better understand both what self-compassion is, what it looks like, and how we can begin to build our own practice, I want to introduce our incredible speaker this afternoon, Dr. Aisha Holder. Dr. Holder joined Columbia Health in 2015 as a postdoctoral psychology fellow. Prior to joining in counseling psychological services, she completed her internship at Princeton House Behavioral Health, as well as clinical psychology externship at Rockland Psychiatric Center, the Center for Study of Anorexia and Bulimia, and Iona College of Counseling Center. Prior to pursuing a career in counseling, Dr. Holder was a vice president at J.P. Morgan Chase in the corporate training group as a facilitator and project manager. During her tenure there, she also served as human resources business partner in the investment banking and consumer banking divisions, as well as senior career advisor and project manager in the career advancement program, and as an associate in the human resources associate program. Dr. Holder received her PhD in counseling psychology from Fordham University, her MA in psychological counseling from Teachers College here at Columbia, and her BA in psychology from Spelman College. We are very fortunate to have her with us today. Please join me in a warm welcome and applause for Dr. Aisha Holder.
Thank you so much, Dennis. Hello, everyone. It's such a pleasure to be here with you today to talk about mindful self-compassion. You know, I learned about this practice, frankly, at the right time. It was during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, coupled with increasing racial tension and violence and political division. And I was eager to find more strategies for how to cope during difficult times, especially when there's a great deal of uncertainty. The practice of self-compassion is particularly helpful for those of us who tend to be very self-critical or identify as perfectionists. Now, I think it's safe to assume that we have individuals in this audience who identify as perfectionists. Yeah? Okay. And we know that perfectionists can be hard on themselves even when things go well. So imagine when a perfectionist experiences disappointments and makes mistakes, which are inevitable. That critical voice can be harsher, and we often feel very isolated. What can we do in those moments? Whether we tend to be perfectionists or not, what can we do in those moments when our suffering is related to a personal mistake or disappointment or tragedy? Or when that suffering is triggered by yet another horrific tragedy that happens around the world or in our country, like 3 mass shootings in 3 days in California a few weeks ago, and the recent murder of Tyree Nichols. What can we do? One tool we can consider using is mindful self-compassion, which helps us to deal with the stress and difficult events that happen in our lives. Self-compassion is a practice of goodwill, not good feelings. And with self-compassion, we mindfully accept that this moment is painful, that it's difficult, and we embrace ourselves with care and kindness. So the first researcher to operationally define and measure the construct of self-compassion is Dr. Kristin Neff, and she is a pioneer in the study of self-compassion, and together with Dr. Chris Germer, developed a program to teach self-compassion skills in our daily lives, and it's called Mindful Self-Compassion. So as we begin this discussion on self-compassion, I invite you to keep some things in mind. Think of the practice of self-compassion as an adventure to help facilitate self-discovery and transformation. This practice can create opportunities to explore our own experience and represent an invitation to new possibilities. Today, we'll learn some of the core principles of mindful self-compassion along with some experiential techniques. But please tailor and adapt these techniques based on ways that most resonate with you. It's important to note that it's not uncommon that this practice can elicit some difficult emotions, which I'll discuss later in the presentation, but I encourage you to take care of yourself, whatever that may look like for you. If you need to take a break or step away, please do so. And also, it's okay to be a slow learner, right? We can really defeat the purpose of learning how to be more self-compassionate if we're beating ourselves up about learning how to be self-compassionate, right? So practice patience and kindness and invite you to please go at your own pace. So, how would you treat a friend? I want you to think about a situation when a close friend shares with you that they're feeling really bad about themselves. They're struggling in some way. Maybe they're dealing with a recent breakup of a romantic relationship, or they didn't get that amazing internship or job they really wanted. I want you to think about how you would respond to your friend in this situation, especially when you're at your best, when you feel like you're most effective. And take a few moments, and you can write down, or I guess that's difficult with your lunch in your hands, or note in a phone, or just keep in mind, what you would typically do in this situation, what you would say, and note the tone in which you would typically talk to this friend. And I won't ask you to share with the larger group, but just take a few moments and consider, how would you respond to this friend who is clearly in a lot of distress? Now, I want you to think about a time when you have felt bad about yourself, or you were struggling. Maybe you were dealing with the ending of a romantic or platonic relationship, or you didn't get that amazing job you really, really wanted. How do you typically respond to yourself in these situations? And please note what you would typically do, what you would say, note the tone in which you would talk to yourself, again, if you were experiencing this distress. Did you notice a difference? Well, in essence, the practice of self-compassion involves treating yourself the way you would treat a dear friend who's having a hard time, even if your friend made a mistake, was feeling inadequate, or facing a tough life challenge. So if we return to the scenario of a friend in distress, they're crying, they're expressing disappointment and sadness about, let's focus on not getting that dream job. Did anyone imagine saying to their friend, well, to be honest, I really understand why you didn't get that job, because you're really not that smart, you're not that skilled, you're not personable, and frankly, I really don't think you'll have a successful life or career. Did that come to mind for anyone? No? Okay, good, just checking. We wouldn't say this to someone that we cared about, right? Of course not. But these are the things we may say to ourselves in a similar situation. So with being a good friend to ourselves, we may say something like, I'm so sorry. Are you okay? This is upsetting. I'm here for you. I appreciate you. Is there anything I can do to help? So self-compassion is like being a good friend to yourself, but a more complete definition of self-compassion involves these three core principles: kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. So self-kindness entails being warm and understanding to ourselves when we suffer, when we fail, when we feel inadequate, rather than beating ourselves up with self-criticism or negative self-talk. Dr. Neff notes that self-kindness is not just about ending self-criticism, but she describes actively opening our hearts to ourselves and responding to our suffering, again, as we would a dear friend in need. Now, self-kindness doesn't mean that we ignore our shortcomings or our problems, right? We're not in the business of denial. We're not ignoring them, but we can accept our shortcomings and our difficulties and do so without judgment. Common humanity is the idea that interconnection is central to the practice of self-compassion. One of the biggest problems with harsh self-judgment and criticism is that it tends to make us feel isolated and cut off from others. And when we fail or feel inadequate in some way, we irrationally feel like everyone else is fine. So if you think about times when you've been particularly self-critical, right? We may go on our phone, maybe go on Instagram, and we start scrolling, right? Does that resonate with some folks? We start looking at all these perfect images and we think, wow, everyone has the perfect life. We're more inclined to think that, and I'm the only one who's a failure, right? So renowned psychologist Tara Brach said, quote, "Feeling unworthy goes hand in hand with feeling separate from others, separate from life. And if we are defective, how can we possibly belong?" End quote. So this creates a frightening sense of disconnection and loneliness that makes suffering worse. So the concept of common humanity helps us to acknowledge that life's challenges, mistakes, and failure are part of the human experience. We all share these experiences. And Dr. Neff notes that common humanity helps us to distinguish between self-compassion from self-acceptance or self-love. And she notes that while self-acceptance and self-love are important, they are incomplete by themselves because we leave out an essential factor, which is other people. Compassion is relational. When we're in touch with our common humanity, we remember that everyone has feelings of inadequacy and disappointment, challenges. Now, while we note that the triggers, circumstances, and the degree of pain may be all different, the process of experiencing pain can be the same. And so with this practice of self-compassion, moments of suffering remind us that we're not alone, and they represent opportunities where we can feel closer and more connected to others. The last core principle of self-compassion is mindfulness. So in order to have compassion for ourselves, we have to be willing to turn towards our pain and acknowledge it, and we can do that with mindfulness. And mindfulness can be described as paying attention in a particular way on purpose, in the present moment and non-judgmentally. We can become aware of our negative thoughts and feelings and just be with them. We're not fighting them, we're not denying them. It doesn't mean we agree, right? So there can be circumstances that come up, and if we accept them, doesn't mean we agree, but we're not denying the reality of it either. So it involves recognizing our suffering without immediately trying to fix our feelings and make them go away. You know, have you ever had the experience of maybe sharing a problem or concern with a family member, a friend, and they like immediately jump into that problem-solving mode? Well, I think you should do this and this and this, right? They are well-intentioned. They're wanting to help. But there's something about being present with, being listened to, you know? And there's some challenges where there are not necessarily any particular solutions, but there's power in being with and, as I like to describe, bearing witness to people's experiences. So mindfulness helps us to also not become over-identified with our negative feelings or thoughts, which can have implications for our sense of worth. So if we return to the example of not getting that dream job, it is understandable to be disappointed when things don't go our way. I'm not suggesting we do cartwheels when we don't get the things that we want, like a dream job. But when we over-identify with negative feelings or thoughts, instead of saying this moment is disappointing, this moment of not getting the job is disappointing, we say life is disappointing, right? So we have to be very careful that we're not over-identifying with the feelings that are in the moment. So over-identification is perceiving temporary events as definitive or permanent. So with mindfulness, it helps us to note that our thoughts and feelings are just that, thoughts and feelings. And being in the present moment also helps us to determine what's the next course of action. Now, there's a growing body of research on how self-compassion supports mental health and well-being. It can help lower depression, anxiety, and bolster overall emotional resilience. But yet there are these reasons why we may be hesitant about practicing self-compassion. And it's important to talk about them, because they are very common. One misconception is that self-compassion is a form of self-pity, like poor me. But Dr. Neff says that self-compassion can be viewed as an antidote to self-pity and the tendency to ruminate about our misfortune. Now, self-compassion, again, doesn't mean we tune out the difficult things, right? That would be avoidance. We're not tuning out, but we're more willing to accept an experience and acknowledge the difficult feelings, which is the mindfulness. We do it with kindness, and remember that everyone suffers from time to time, and that's that common humanity. And this helps us to better process challenges that we experience. Research shows that self-compassionate people are more likely to engage in perspective talking rather than focusing on their own distress. And they're also less likely to ruminate on how bad things are, which helps to better promote mental health. Another myth about self-compassion is that it represents weakness, and it's a sign of vulnerability. And it's really quite the opposite. That Dr. Neff and other researchers are discovering that self-compassion can really be a powerful resource for demonstrating coping and resilience. It can represent inner strength and courage. Because when we go through major life crises, self-compassion appears to really make the difference in our ability to survive and even thrive in those situations. If, for example, we suppress our feelings in response to difficult situations and not acknowledge the pain we're experiencing, we're missing out on opportunities for how we can intervene in ways that are comforting. We miss out on opportunities to ask the question, what do I need in this moment? Another myth is that self-compassion will make me lazy. It will make me complacent. I am at Columbia. This is a competitive space, right? The key is that it does not undermine our motivation, right? And I think that is a common factor. It feels like if I'm kinder to myself, I won't feel as motivated to do well. And so it's important to note that self-compassion provides the emotional safety needed when we make mistakes, and that we can maintain high standards without criticizing ourselves, right? We don't have to make excuses when we could have been more effective in order to show ourselves compassion. So if we find that we have been not as effective in a particular moment, there's a failure that we're experiencing, a mistake that we made, self-compassion allows us to be accountable in those moments. We don't have to beat ourselves up. So if we fail an exam, for example, right, that's a difficult moment. We can acknowledge we're upset. I really wanted to do well on that exam. I'm really worried about whether I'm going to pass this course, not just pass, but I want to do well. In that moment, we can think about giving ourselves a hug if that resonates, say I want to do better on the exam. But self-compassion doesn't leave us there. We then say, what can I do? And that's the beauty of self-compassion. It's the tension of the being and the doing. Because the mindfulness allows us to be and then say, what do I need in this moment? It can be comfort, it could be reassurance, and then there's this other piece of what can I do? So in response to, I failed this exam, what I can do is talk to my professor, talk to my TA, join a study group, right? Maybe seek out tutoring, right? So it allows us to feel less afraid of failure and more likely to try again and be persistent after failing. Self-compassion is so important because as perfectionists, we have to really come to terms with the fact that that doesn't exist, right? There will be moments that will bring us challenge, and self-compassion is a really helpful tool for how do we respond when we're dealing with suffering. The final myth that I'll talk about today is this idea that being self-compassionate is too selfish or self-focused, I guess because of the emphasis on self. But if you think about the times when you've been ruminating about a failure or being self-critical, are you more self-focused or are you other-focused in those moments? Do you have more resources or fewer resources to give to others? Most people find that when they're absorbed in that self-judgment and self-criticism, there's very little capacity left over to think about anything else other than those moments of feeling so unworthy. We may tend to be more self-centered. So when we can be kind and nurturing to ourselves, in fact, that allows for more opportunities to be of service to others. So now I want to move into talking about a concept called backdraft, and then we'll move forward into practicing some self-compassion techniques. This is a concept that can happen in the practice of self-compassion and is called backdraft. When we begin to practice self-compassion, we can experience pain when we give ourselves kindness and compassion. Backdraft is a term that firefighters use to describe what happens when a fire has used all available oxygen and fresh oxygen is introduced through an open window or door. It's like the air rushes in and flames rush out. And Dr. Neff describes that a similar effect can occur when we open the door of our hearts with self-compassion. So when we begin to treat ourselves with kindness, it can elicit memories and feelings from when we were not cared for, or loved or accepted in the past. This is really important to note because we may think that the practice of self-compassion is not working because it's bringing up very difficult emotions. But it's important to note that if we feel overwhelmed by difficult emotions, a self-compassionate response would be to retreat temporarily, doing things like focusing on your breath or engaging in some other self-care activity. You know, this concept of backdraft reminds me of a session I was having with a student who was sharing with me that they had experiences of bullying in elementary school and middle school. And in great detail was sharing about these experiences. And I remember, I do this a lot in session where I put my hand over my heart. It's a nonverbal way in which I'm communicating. I'm very touched by what I'm hearing. And I said, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And this person was visibly moved, what appeared to be moved, and started to tear up. And what was interesting is that was eliciting more emotion of saying, I'm so sorry that happened to you, than the details of really bullying is trauma. And it was the idea of extending that compassion, that I'm attempting to connect to her suffering, stepping into her world and saying, I'm sorry, you didn't deserve that. And when we have experiences, as particularly in childhood, of bullying and other kinds of difficulties in maybe our families of origin, what we know developmentally is that the only way we can understand what's happening is that it must be me. Developmentally, it's the only way we can make sense of that chaos. It must be me, right? I wasn't enough. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't good enough. I wasn't fill in the blank enough. Now, the beauty of adulthood is we get to challenge those narratives, right? And I think return to our original narrative, which is we were always enough. And the idea, I love this phrase, it's not mine, but I don't remember the source, frankly, but I use it a lot, that we are inherently worthy by virtue of our breath. And when we can connect to that, there's such, even as I say it now, it hits me that I don't have to do anything to be inherently worthy. Now, again, it doesn't mean that I'm suggesting you lay in your dorms and not do anything, right? That our accomplishments and our goals, they certainly have a place in our lives, right? They can be important and inform how we think about ourselves. But that core of ourselves that represents that unconditional space, right? That we're inherently worthy by virtue of our breath. So in this practice of self-compassion, emotions can come to the surface, right? But it doesn't mean it's not working. It's an opportunity for an awakening. So with that said, I'll move into our first exercise. And I invite you to participate. It's optional if you feel comfortable. Again, I invite you to join me. I'll do it along with you. The first exercise is called Soothing Touch. It's about 5 minutes, and it's one easy way to soothe or comfort yourself when you're feeling badly is to give yourself a gentle hug or caress, or simply put your hand over your heart, which I do a lot, and feel the warmth of your hand. Now, it may feel awkward or embarrassing, right? But that's what your mind is telling you. That's the cognitive response. Emotionally, your body, physically, I should say, your body says, this feels good, right? That physical gesture of warmth and care is almost like a baby being cuddled by a loved one. And research indicates that physical touch releases oxytocin, which creates a sense of security and soothes distressing emotions. So I'd like you to just take a few moments to take some deep breaths. We're going to breathe in deeply through our nose. Just take in as much air as possible as you can. And then you're going to breathe out, trying letting all the air out. Whatever represents some satisfying breaths for you. And again, you have your hand over your heart. And if you wish, you can place both hands on your chest if you'd like. And maybe notice the difference between one hand versus two. One hand is sometimes associated with when we need comfort or soothing. Two hands is more of a protective stance, right? If we need to reassert our boundaries maybe in that moment. And if you'd like, you can make small circles with your hand or on your chest. You know, sometimes if I'm in session and I'm hearing some really difficult content from a client, you know, I put my hand on my heart, signaling I'm present with this person, but I also can feel sort of tension because I'm hearing really difficult material. And so I will sort of massage that tension, being aware of it. And feel the natural rising and falling of your chest as you breathe in and you breathe out. And the idea is that you stay here as long as you'd like, right? Now with soothing touch, there are other possibilities, right? Doesn't have to be over your heart. It could be one hand on your cheek or cradling your face with your hands. This always reminds me of like an elder who is like, I'm so happy to see you, right? You know, something very endearing about that. Gently stroking your arms, you know, crossing your arms and giving yourself a gentle squeeze. Hand on your abdomen, right? We can have a hand on our abdomen and on our heart. Or cupping one hand in our lap, like this, right? You could even sort of massage your hand too. It's all touch, you know. So again, you think about what resonates with you, and what's helpful is to try these things out. And also, depending on what might be these other possibilities, it could depend on the situation, what might work best for you. Okay. All right. So now I want to move into what's called the self-compassion break. And it's a brief, informal practice that is really wonderful in bringing in, integrating the three core principles of self-compassion, right? The kindness, the mindfulness, and the common humanity. And so this would be something you might use, you could use it multiple times throughout the day, right? And it's a practice that we use when we're experiencing some suffering, right? We're experiencing some distress. So I'm gonna invite you to think about a situation in your life that is difficult and that's causing you stress. But I would say please choose a problem that's mild to moderate in range, right? We don't want to pick a big problem because we're practicing right now, and we don't want to overwhelm ourselves, right? Particularly when we're first learning the skill of self-compassion. So if you have a situation in mind, I want you to allow yourself to see and hear and feel your way into that problem to the extent that you experience maybe some uneasiness in your body. Then say to yourself slowly and clearly, this is a moment of suffering. bringing mindful awareness to the fact that suffering is present. And I invite you to find some language that may speak to you. Maybe it's something like, "This hurts. This is really hard right now. I'm really struggling." Next, say to yourself again, slowly and clearly, "Suffering is part of living. That's common humanity." Other things you may say to yourself is, "We all struggle in our lives, and I'm not alone." Now I invite you to put your hands over your heart or wherever you might feel comfortable in placing your hands, wherever it feels supportive. Feeling the warmth of that touch, and say to yourself quietly, "May I be kind to myself." May I give myself what I need. Or choosing any language that supports this spirit or sense of kindness. Perhaps asking yourself what quality of self-compassion you may need right now, the yin or the yang. Yin language might be, "May I accept myself just as I am." Or, "May I care for myself tenderly in this moment." Yang language might be, "May I have the courage and strength to make a change." And if you're having difficulty finding the right words, imagine that a dear friend or loved one is having the same problem as you. What would you say to this person, heart to heart, without giving advice? If your friend were to hold just a few words in their mind, what would you like them to be? What message would you like to deliver? Now, can you offer the same message to yourself? A practice that can be used throughout the day as needed and helps us to remember the core aspects of self-compassion, the kindness, the common humanity, that we're not alone, and the mindfulness. Okay. So in our remaining minutes, I'm so eager to introduce you to another meditation, called Loving Kindness Meditation. Now, this is a longer one, but in the interest of time, I'm going to go through it a little faster. but it's typically 20 minutes. And I'll talk about some resources in a little bit where you can access this meditation. So I invite you to get in a comfortable position. Again, just kind of realign yourself as needed. And take a few deep breaths again and letting out any tension that might have happened, developed over the morning. Now I'd like you to call to mind an image of someone who has been unconditionally kind to you, who has supported you, who has cared about you over the years. Someone with whom you have a very uncomplicated sort of feelings, or maybe a mentor, a favorite aunt, a good friend, even perhaps a favorite pet, if that's what comes to mind. Someone you feel safe with. Imagine this person in front of you, how they look, what they sound like, how you feel in their presence. Imagine this person was sitting across from you, and you're going to send them goodwill and kindness, the wish for their well-being, repeating the following phrases silently. May you be safe. May you be peaceful. May you be healthy. May you live with ease and well-being. May you be safe. May you be peaceful. May you be healthy. May you live with ease and well-being. And if your mind starts wandering off, just come back to those phrases. Now imagine yourself in this person's presence and include yourself in this circle of goodwill. Imagine yourself sitting in front of the person whom you care about so deeply. And say silently, may we be safe. May we be peaceful. May we be healthy. May we live with ease. Now focus your attention exclusively on yourself, remembering that you too deserve unconditional kindness, compassion, caring, as all human beings do. Let your feelings of kindness springboard from the ones you generated for this person you care about. May I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I be healthy. May I live with ease. And if you're having trouble getting in touch with your feelings, you might try to put your hand again gently on your heart, feeling the warmth there. Repeating, may I be safe. May I be peaceful. May I be healthy. Mind and body, may I live with ease. Again, if you find yourself distracted or lost in thoughts, that's fine. Remember to come back to the phrases and the feeling of care and kindness underlying the wish of goodwill. Now I would like you to call to mind someone that you know, but you don't know very well, right? Maybe someone who's a classmate, someone you may see in the local grocery store, someone whose story you really don't know, and try to focus on one person. Remembering that even if you don't know this person well or know their story, that they too suffer and want to be free of suffering. And they, like every human being, deserves kindness and care. Imagine this person in your mind's eye and send this person kindness as well. May you be safe. May you be peaceful. May you be healthy. May you live with ease and well-being. Gently repeating the phrases to yourself. Now widen the circle of kindness, caring, and compassion, perhaps thinking about people close to you, classmates, your family, your friends, your inner circle, people you see regularly, including yourself. Once more, may we all be safe. May we all be peaceful. May we all be healthy. May we all live with ease. Then widen the circle to include people in the city, town that you live in, people you share community with. May we all be safe. May we be peaceful. May we be healthy. May we live with ease. And now letting that circle widen broadly, broadly, broadly until it encompasses all of humankind with all the joys and sorrows of living this human life. Just wishing and intending, sending the gift of loving kindness to all people who feel. May we be safe. May we be peaceful. May our world be peaceful. May we be healthy. May we live with ease. And widen the circle more to include animals and plants and all living creatures, remembering that you want all living creatures to be healthy and happy. May this earth and all creatures on it be safe. May we live peacefully and in harmony. May we all be healthy and thriving, and may we all live with natural ease. And in this last moment, just let yourself rest in the feelings of goodwill, kindness, and caring and compassion that you've generated. Letting yourself feel it in your body. And even if you feel a bit cold or shut down, just savor, if nothing else, the intention of kindness. And when you're ready, gently open your eyes and see if you can carry these feelings of goodwill throughout your day. Okay, so again, it's usually about 20 minutes, but wanted to give you a sense of what the loving kindness meditation at least feels like a little bit. In closing, just want to share some resources on mindfulness, self-compassion. Dr. Neff is very gracious with her materials, and she's written some amazing books, and the citations are listed here. And at the bottom, she has a website and really has a lot of material that she has available for free. And you can find many of these exercises as well as some audio meditations. So I encourage you to explore further around mindful self-compassion. And then lastly, just want to mention CPS. Self-compassion is not a form of therapy. While it could be therapeutic, it's not therapy. And so if you are interested in professional support around therapy, either individual, group, or medication treatment options, we are here and available for you. We're at Lerner Hall, the 5th and 8th floors. These are our hours during academic year. We also have drop-in hours, problem-solving drop-in hours, but we have our noted our website at the bottom. So I encourage you to take a look at that, and you could see the full array of services that we provide students here at Morningside campus. Thank you. Questions? Yes, if there are any questions. Can we do this more often? Sure, I'm happy to be here with you. Great suggestion.
Do you have a question? Hi, my name's Olivia. I'm with the SUMA program, so it's with the School of Professional Studies and the Climate School. I what I come up against is when you see a friend that you would love to introduce this sort of thing to, but maybe they're not as open or they have all the misconceptions and that sort of thing. So what advice do you have for like bring other people into the world of self-compassion who are open to it?
Yeah. It's a good question. I think if I have a friend who's a little reluctant about engaging in self-compassion, I may want to talk a little bit more about why, because it may hit some of the common myths about self-compassion. And I think it's hard for people to sort of go against the idea that, like, I don't want to be sometimes cared for, right? If we present self-compassion, and especially as a friend, that I care about you, I love you, I want the best for you, right? And I found this practice that could be helpful. Now, again, it's one tool of many tools. And I think, as we are moving along the lifespan, the goal is to think about how many tools can we have in our toolkit to manage through our difficulties. And so I think just, talking to this friend about the ways that self-compassion can be helpful for them. And if there's reluctance, again, the backdraft where I talked about the emotions that could be elicited, the difficult ones, the self-compassion practice brings it to the surface, but we may not know why. It's the what is happening, but not the why. And maybe therapy might be helpful for your friend in better understanding the why this is coming up, or what might be informing the reluctance to treating ourselves kindly, right? It's a very complicated question, right? Why am I less deserving of being treated with kindness? It's often a whole history around that. So I think a way of supporting that friend is how you treat them, modeling self-compassion, and also maybe an opportunity for them to explore it in more kind of a professional setting like therapy. Thank you. Thank you.
Umberto, Columbia JS. I need some insight in regards to, throughout the time that I've been here, I've noticed that I've grown cold, and it almost feels like I'm desensitizing myself emotionally. Like sometimes, for example, when midterms happen, finals happen, and we all stressed out, and this very stressful culture creates for weeks. And once midterms or finals are done, and then I hear the next person complain, I got an A minus, and it's just like, I don't want to hear it. Like, and I got an A minus too, but I'm just trying to move on. And I notice that as that happens more, I'm desensitizing myself, and I'm becoming apathetic, and almost to the point where I don't want to hear people say these things anymore. And recently I catch myself regarding myself to people as petty, and just not wanting to hear what they feel, what they have to say, because they got an A minus. And I feel like I'm transforming into this version that I'm not sure if it's good or bad. So any knowledge is welcome.
Yeah. Thank you for your question, your insights. It resonates, and I imagine it resonates for others as well. So when I meet with students, when they're talking about some of the academic stress, right, and what you described as feeling a bit desensitized, I like to locate the concern in a broader context. We're coming up on 3 years, almost 3 years of a pandemic where the world shut down. There is no handbook for that. And also just one thing after the other in terms of chaos, right? And that can be really difficult. And sometimes desensitizing ourselves can almost be protective, because it may be the way that we're trying to manage so much chaos and so many situations that are feeling overwhelming in this moment. So I think the mindfulness, the awareness that you just articulated is really a strength, and really positive that you've noted that this is something I'm noticing about myself, right? And one of the things that can be helpful is, how do because I think when we're desensitized, it feels like disconnection, and we may feel more isolated, and we may think about, what are those moments in which I can lean into connection? What might that look like? And there are ways in which we can do that moment to moment to moment. I didn't know where Pulitzer Hall was until I came here, and I was like, oh, I'm always out here in front of the journalism school in the spring, if you kind of just don't listen to anything, the birds, they're having a meeting or something. It's like in the day, just connecting with nature can be a way of connecting and feeling less desensitized. So I don't want to prescribe, like you should do this, this, and this, because I think self-care is a very personal endeavor. But whatever those things that make you feel more connected, I would invite you to lean into those moments, right? And then, yes, I think Columbia can be described as a stress culture, not unlike other Ivy League experiences. And I encourage clients I work with to think about what is life outside of Columbia as well, right? Get on the train and go to Brooklyn, or go to, another borough, have another experience, something that takes you away from just sort of the academics. I'm acknowledging the importance of academics. I get it, but there's also a whole person. And so think about opportunities where you can nourish the whole person, not just your academic life, not just in here, but in here, every way. How are we nourishing ourselves can help maybe at not feeling as disconnected. But I do want to acknowledge that we're in some very difficult times, very difficult times. And I think as those who are more along the adult span, these are difficult times. Imagine as a young person, right? There's no handbook for what we're managing. So compassion for yourself moment to moment. I'll let them.
Hi everyone, my name is Jordan DeSanto. I'm a first-year PhD student in the Department of Religion. This is my third academic institution, so when you're talking about social isolation, I really understand that. And my main question is, how do we hold these two things in tension, the being and doing, like the emphasis upon creating space and nourishing the self, and also can these forms of self-care give way to institutional change? Because I think a part of the tension of what's at stake here is that we are dealing with a vacuum of compassion that Columbia creates and makes decisions that socially isolate. Like, to your question, there's a reason that you're feeling the way that you're feeling. You shouldn't be treated the way that you're being treated. And a really great anecdote that one of my professors shared is that in my seminar, the way that they schedule the classes, there's no time in between for me to connect with other people outside of myself. And so I think these isolating practices are a part of institutions of social isolation. And so, yeah, I guess my question is, how do we hold these two in tension while practicing self-care and at the same time really using this as a practice? I really like that meditation of building from yourself to somebody that you know to a stranger, but how can we really create routines and practices and rituals of collective self-compassion, and are people thinking about that at that level?
Thank you for that question. It's a rich question. So I think that tension of the creating and doing, it can feel like it's in opposition, and I get that, of the being and the doing, but it's the idea, it's the dialectic that two things can, or multiple things can exist at the same time. And so the opportunity is a challenge, and also an opportunity for us is how do we integrate it where acknowledging the doing doesn't undermine the being, acknowledging the being doesn't undermine the doing, that they're together. The piece about self-care, it's a challenging question, right? Because, not unique to Columbia, but there are institutional forces that don't sometimes support sort of taking care of ourselves. I think a lot of times it's productivity and doing and doing and doing, and what's the next goal, what's the next accomplishment, et cetera, et cetera. And this is where I think we try to exercise control and say, well, what are my boundaries? Because I am a self that's operating in an entity, but I have some agency in those boundaries that I can assert. And so part of that could be focusing on the building blocks of my self-care, right? That I'm going to be non-negotiable about my self-care. I tell this to students a lot, that thinking about self-care as your fuel. It's not, I'll do that when the semester is over, right? It is moment to moment, day to day, that I'm thinking about how do I nourish myself. It is a non-negotiable because it's our fuel, right? I use this example that you could have a car that, I guess there are cars that cost like $500 million. There are these amazing cars, right? They state of the art, all of that. Well, they're not going anywhere if they run out of fuel, right? They're not gonna be able to realize that potential if they run out of fuel. So seeing that self-care is really important, as critical. So the building blocks, right? Like, what's our sleep schedule looking like? That is an act of self-care. What is nutrition looking like? That's an act of self-care. Movement, that is an act of self-care, right? Not just how are we nourishing ourselves, not just what we're eating, but I think there was one thought about how do you practice self-compassion with all this negative social media, right? How do we think of what we're consuming? Is it nourishing us? Is it, emphasizing self-compassion or not? So even when there are these institutional barriers, right, or when semester may end, doesn't feel like it's enough time, if those are things that we may not have immediate control over, right, although as students you are advocates as well, and there can be hopefully an opportunity to express those concerns, but if immediately it can't be moved, then we think about what are those boundaries that I can exercise that are going to ensure that I take care of myself and take a non-negotiable stance when it comes to that.
We need to wrap up.
Sorry.
We can turn it over to.
Yes. Okay. Sorry. Thank you, everyone.
No, you're good. Thank you. I'm just going to take a couple of minutes of your time. I'm Dr. Melanie Burnitz. I'm the Senior Vice President for Columbia Health, and we were so thrilled to co-sponsor this event with University Life, and really just want to give my incredible gratitude to Dr. Aisha Holder for this fantastic presentation and discussion. Please join me in thanking Dr. Holder for this. Thank you, Aisha. You all actually gave yourself a gift but just by showing up today. I feel like I got a gift today just by being able to hear, learn, and work through these exercises. So you've actually shown how you understand how important it is to take care of yourselves as you go through this experience here at Columbia. And as we close out, I just want to remind you that there are a multitude of resources. As Dr. Holder said, you can give a lot to yourself, but also know when you need to reach out and get help from others. Columbia Health for Students here on the Morningside and Manhattanville campuses is a team that's here to support you during your time. We've got over 200 healthcare professionals. We're here to partner with you, to help you, and we offer so many programs and services so that you can be happy, healthy, and well while you're here. And those programs and services span medical care, mental health care, health promotion, education, disability accommodations, violence prevention, and advocacy. So please visit our website, health.columbia.edu. You can see over 70 different programs and services to support you while you're here at Columbia. You can call for appointments. We're not only here for routine needs, but certainly in moments of crisis as well, 24/7 availability for you. So remember all of that. As I say, the website, health.columbia.edu, it's up here behind us. We're on Facebook and Instagram as well. And if you don't know where to find help, email us at health@columbia.edu and we'll connect you with the right person or the department. For our students from the Medical Center campus, Student Health on Haven similarly offers many programs and services to support the CUIMC students during their health sciences education. They have confidential resources as well around well-being and health promotion with strategy sessions. They also have counseling services and medical services and additional programs. And their website is studenthealth.cuimc.columbia.edu. So thank you for being here with us today, for learning, for growing, and for taking care of yourselves. We wish you all the very best as you go through your day practicing some self-compassion, and all the best for the rest of the semester. Thanks, everyone.